Hello everyone, it's Nina and welcome back to my channel. For today's video, we are going to be doing a video I first saw done by Riley Marie, who I think I've mentioned is one of my favorite booktube channels. She did a video where she went through her Goodreads TBR and basically unhauled / removed from her TBR shelf any books that she wasn't interested in reading anymore. I thought this book was a really interesting concept, and it's something honestly I feel like I have needed to do with my Storygraph TBR. In the last 4.5, maybe to 5 years since I've had Storygraph, I definitely have added a bunch of books to my TBR list that now in 2026, my reading tastes have very much changed from what I was reading back in 2020. So I feel like now would be a really good time to go through this TBR list with you guys. And I figured going through this list with you guys, I can take off books that I'm actually not interested in anymore, and instead focus on the books that I'm actually interested in and planning to read going forward. I also am someone that I feel like I have somewhat a level of choice paralysis that if I have a huge TBR, or I'm reading a lot of books at once, it makes me want to read none of them. So I feel like by narrowing down this list, that will really help me when it comes time to pick what I'm going to read next. So with that intro out of the way, let's get right on into the video. I am going to create a screen recording and then pop myself into the corner. So let's go ahead and take a look at the books that are on my TBR. Okay, so as you're probably looking at my TBR list, I have 243 books in this list. I think I'm going to do it by title, and then we'll go through and see which ones I'm not interested in reading anymore. Okay, so the first one, 3 books down, that I think I'm going to remove is After the Blast. This is a book that I think I probably added more so as a reference for something my wife would probably want to read. So I'm going to go ahead and open this in a new tab and then remove it from my TBR list. Okay, scrolling down a little bit more, I have another book I think I'm going to remove, Beware the Woman by Megan Abbott. I think I had heard about this book through a podcast I can't even remember the title of now, but the host made it sound really interesting. However, I just feel like I am not a big thriller person, and if I'm going to read a thriller, it might be one of the ones that I have on my physical TBR, versus this one that I've never heard anyone else talk about. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this one. I'm going to go ahead and remove Bonesmith. This is a book that I thought I would be really interested in. I believe the cover artist is actually the same person that did the cover of Gideon the Ninth, and in some ways it has very similar energy to Gideon the Ninth. However, I actually read, I think a sample of the first chapter, and I wasn't super impressed with the writing, so I just feel like I'm not going to actually go ahead and read this one. Okay, here's another one that's a nonfiction book that I feel like is something my wife actually wants to read. So I'm going to go ahead and open that in a new tab and then remove it from my own TBR. Okay, this one I'm not really sure about. It's honestly something that I had planned to read maybe back 2 or 3 years ago. Deathless by Catherine M. Valente. I've heard really amazing things about Catherine M. Valente as an author. I've heard this book in particular is really good. It has a lot of tropes that I usually really like. However, I'm pretty sure this is an unfinished series. I think you can read it as a standalone, but the fact that it kind of is a little bit up in the air with the ending makes me more hesitant to read it, knowing that it's never going to have an actual definitive ending. I also think I thought this book was a lot more romance heavy than it actually is when I added it to my TBR. So I'd like someone's opinion. If you've read this book, do you think I would like it? Should I go ahead and try and read it, or should I just take it off of my TBR? Okay, next book I think I'm going to take off my TBR is actually what I had put in a upcoming new releases I'm excited about video, and that's The Devils by Joe Abercrombie. I haven't heard necessarily bad things, but I just feel like I am actually not as interested in this as I thought I was initially. And I just feel like there's a lot of other fantasy books that are way higher on my TBR compared to this one. Also seeing here that it's probably part of a series, I just don't know if I'm really ready to commit to that. And I feel like there's just other things that I would rather read ahead of this, so I'm going to go ahead and remove this also from my TBR. Okay, this is another one that is kind of in a similar vein. Dungeon Crawler Carl. I've heard so many people talk about this book and this series, and I feel like it would be really interesting to do for a specific video I have in mind, but I don't really know if it's necessarily my personal taste. Okay, this one I definitely knew I was going to remove when I was thinking about this list. Exquisite Ruin by Adrienne May. I had been in an independent bookstore and saw this book and thought the cover was really beautiful. And then I think I was watching someone else's vlog and they mentioned this book was sapphic, but then when I actually read the description, there's no mention of anything sapphic in this book. And it just seems like another somewhat generic romantasy. So I think I'm going to go ahead and remove it. If I'm actually wrong and there is something gay, please let me know. But otherwise, I just don't think I really would be interested in this one. Kind of on the reversal, I think I'm going to remove Fingersmith from my TBR. I know, me removing one of the classic lesbian novels However, I just feel like this book is probably way too long for my personal tastes. And I feel like I can just watch either the like limited series or the movie adaptation. And if I like either of those, maybe I'll go back and read the original book. But as it stands right now, I'm just like not actually that interested in it. I think I'm probably going to remove Ithaca by Claire North. I do really, really love a lot of Greek mythology retellings, and I really love the Iliad and the Odyssey retellings in particular. I've already read and enjoyed versions of Penelope's story that I'm not really that excited to get into a like 3-book long retelling of her story here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that from my TBR. Okay, another book that I am going to be removing is The Lamplighters by Emma Stonks, or Emma Stonix. Still don't know how to say her name. I decided I'm going to unhaul this book. I'm just like not that interested in it anymore. I do love lighthouses. I do love stories set around lighthouses, but I just like very rarely read literary fiction anyway. Then I'm going to go ahead and take this one off. Okay, I just was scrolling for a while. To be honest, a lot of these books I do actually want to keep on my TBR, but I found another one I think I'm going to remove. That's Quicksilver by Callie Hart. This is a book I actually did start in 2025. I think I read the first like 3 or 4 chapters, and I just like was not vibing with it. I just did not really like the main character. I didn't really like the setting either, or a lot of like the world building. I do think there was like a pretty dramatic switch in the setting when she goes into like a Fey portal or something, but for the start of the book, I just like wasn't really vibing with it. And I feel like when I get to a point that I'm constantly checking like my percentage of being done with the book, that's a sign that I'm just like wanting the book to be over. And if I'm early enough in the book, I'm kind of like, you know what, I can just like not actually read this. So I'm gonna go ahead and just like decide that I'm not gonna read this book. Okay, I found another book I think I'm gonna take off. We have Stalking Jack the Ripper by Carrie Maniscalco. First of all, I did not realize this book is about to be 10 years old in 2026. The other thing is the fact that I have read the entirety of the Kingdom of the Wicked series by Carrie Maniscalco, and I did not like the majority of those books. I think they're goofy and maybe fun in a like so bad it's good kind of way, but I just feel like I have moved past any desire to read any of her other books, so I'm gonna go ahead and like take this one off my TBR. Another book that might be a little bit surprising because I think this one is like pretty well loved, I'm gonna remove As Strange the Dreamer by Laini Taylor. People say this book is very unique and very interesting, but I feel like everything I've learned about it makes me like not actually that intrigued to pick it up. Also, I'm just noticing the audiobook is 18 hours. That is kind of a time commitment I'm not really sure I'm willing to put in for a book that I'm kind of middle of the road on. So I'm gonna go ahead and take that off of my TBR. Another YA book that I just don't think I'm interested in, we have A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faizal. Moving down a little bit, I have To Cage a God by Elizabeth May. I originally had the Illumicrate special edition of this, but I'm trying to sell it actually. I just don't think I'm really interested in this book anymore. I've also heard that the author is kind of like discontinuing the series, even though you can read the first book as standalone. That just makes me like not as interested anymore. If the author is not interested in continuing the series, then I'm also like not really interested in putting in the work to read the early books in the series. I think the next book I'm going to remove is Unlearning Shame by Devon Price. I do have another book by Devon Price on my TBR that I think was probably shown a little bit earlier on. However, this one, I feel like topic-wise, I'm just not as interested in. I did really like their book Unmasking Autism. In terms of using this book for like self-help purposes, I feel like it's a topic that I'm actually not really struggling with, so I don't know if I really get a lot out of reading this book. I also have another book, So You've Been Publicly Shamed, that I think is more interesting in the way it talks about the topic of shame, so I feel like that's the one I would probably want to read on if I'm interested in this topic over this book. Okay, I have another book that I think I'm going to take off my TBR. However, this book is something that I probably would be willing to read if people say they really, really like it. It's What Big Teeth by, I think, Harry Sabot. It has their pre-transition name listed here. This is a book that I've seen come up time and time again. I really, really love the cover. I think it's so beautiful. However, I actually did read a little bit of like a sample of the first chapter, and I wasn't a huge fan of the writing style. It just seemed a little bit complicated and hard to follow. I don't know if it also was the fact that I read this maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and my tastes have probably changed since then. So anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and remove this from my TBR. Oh my gosh, another book that I've been really meaning to remove is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is another book that's just like way too long. I've heard it's kind of like a retread of a couple other books that are also very popular, and I just feel like my time and interest in this book has definitely waned, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And apparently then we've gotten to the end of my TBR. I think I'm going to go through one more time and like do a double take and make sure I've actually removed everything that I want to. Because I kind of feel like there was a book or two that I maybe passed by that I actually am interested in removing. Okay, I found another one I definitely forgot about. We have City of Nightmares by Rebecca Schaeffer. This is another one I probably could make the case, if people really like it, that I would add it back in. But I'm pretty sure I added this because it was a Fairy Loot or Illumicrate pick from a couple years ago that had an interesting-ish premise, but I've heard a lot of people don't really like it, so I'm gonna go ahead and remove it for now. In general, like fantasy young adult that doesn't have anything queer going on is mostly something I only pick up once in a blue moon, so I'm probably gonna remove anything else kind of similar to that in this list. Guys, I'm going through the list again, and I still am not really finding a lot of things I want to get rid of. I actually am surprised that there's not more. I thought I would for sure find more things that I didn't want to have on my TBR. Okay, I wasn't sure about this one, but I think I am going to remove it. We have The Nietzschean Smile by C.J. Murwild. This is another one that I really like this person as an artist. They do really beautiful work. They also did the cover of their own book. However, I'm pretty sure they have said that they are discontinuing the series. And like I said before, it's really hard for me to get invested in a series if the author themselves is like not planning on finishing it. So I do think I'm probably going to remove this, since I think I might follow them on Instagram. If they end up making a post saying that they're going to go ahead and finish like the last book in the series, then I probably will re-add this to my TBR. But I think for now I'm probably going to remove this one. Kind of similarly, I have a random like nonfiction book down here that I think I'm also going to remove. I think I'm going to also remove Running Close to the Wind by Alexandra Rowland. This is another one I might add back onto my TBR, but I don't know if I'm super interested in this book anymore. I do own her other book, A Taste of Golden Iron, and maybe if I really like her writing style, I'll add this one back into my TBR, but I think for right now I'm going to take it off. Okay, I think for the final book I'm going to remove, I have A Sweet and Bitter Magic by Adrienne Tooley. This is a lesbian fantasy young adult book that I think I added when I was like specifically searching out sapphic YA fantasy. However, I don't think I'm as interested in the topic of this book, and I've heard it's quite like sad and slow paced compared to like some other sapphic YA fantasy that I have on my TBR. This is kind of the one that's on like the bottom of the barrel. So I'm going to go ahead and remove it from my TBR now. Okay, so that's going to be it for this video. Going through the list, we are currently at 219 books on my TBR, and we started at 243. So that means I've only removed 24 books from my Storygraph TBR. Honestly, a lot less than I thought I was going to be. I honestly thought I could probably cut this list in half. However, I feel like this just goes to show me that pretty much every book I have on my TBR is one that I'm interested in actually reading. And maybe to remove those books from my TBR, the thing I have to do is not to completely unhaul them, but to instead make the commitment to go ahead and actually read these books. And at least by starting them, I'll be able to see if they're a book that I'm really enjoying, or if there's something I should just go ahead and DNF and remove from my TBR that way. Hopefully you guys found this video interesting. I know it's a little bit different than some of the other videos I put out on my channel. I also am pretty sure I spent around like 30 to 40 minutes looking through my TBR. So who knows how long this video is going to end up being once I edit it down. But that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys as always so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider liking, commenting, or subscribing if you aren't already. Consider following me on the Storygraph if you'd like to see my reading updates in real time. And watch me as I get down my TBR list from those 219 books. And I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!